today we're going to look at playing through the changes. So a couple of people have written comments this week asking how I and other players play through changes. One of the comments I heard was that they hear a lot of good chicken pickers, and often when they'll stop just before the chord change, and then they'll play something. But how do you weave your line or connect it into the next chord? So what I just played was a 12-bar blues in the key of A, and I'm just going to take you briefly through what I did. So the first 4 bars are just A, and that's what I was thinking about. However, when it goes to chord 4, now this is in the 5th bar, it goes to D, I start preparing going to a D, and I start to change my thinking. Instead of thinking I'm in A, I'm now in the 4th bar. I start thinking I'm about to move. It's almost like I'm going to the airport, I've got my bags packed, and I'm going to D for two bars. It's going to be great. I don't live in D land, but I'm going to have fun when I'm there, and I'm going to do the right method of getting there. And what I do is I play an altered lick that is from the 5 of D, which in this key is an A. So all I have to do is just play like an A diminished lick or an A altered lick, and that will take me there. I'm thinking about what note in D I want to land on beat 1 so it sounds like it's a really good resolution. It's the equivalent of just landing at the main airport, like you know you're in D land. Then I play some other D licks because now I'm in D land, that's what I'm thinking about. But again, when I'm sort of halfway through that 2nd bar, I'm thinking about I got to go back to A pretty soon. And so how am I going to get back to A? So I could just weave the lick in D back to a very strong note in A and land on the first beat of the bar that A begins. Or I could use that same jazz process of taking the 5 of A and playing a line. I didn't do that this time. I could have done it. That would be taking an E altered or an E7 flat 9 lick and playing it. Then I have 2 bars of A again, and I play some A licks. But again, I'm thinking like the turnaround's coming up. The turnaround here is going to be, there's a couple of different things you can do with a turnaround, but let's just say for a country song, it's probably going to be 5 for 2 bars, more or less, and then 1 for 2 bars, and that's your last 4 bars of the whole song. So I'm thinking about, I've got to play a strong note in the key of E. And so I did an approach line to that strong note. Then in the 2nd bar of E, I turned it into an altered lick, so it intensifies the dissonance, and then I resolve it back to A. And in the very last bar, I did another diminished lick. This time, again, it was an E going back to an A. So it started with this. So if I played with a jazz tone, that's just bebop line. So slowly that's just like on the 9th, then I move down, then I'm doing a chromatic approach to the 13th. Then this is kind of like an internal 2-5 lick. Not purely a 2-5-1 lick, but it's hinting at that. This would be a 2-5-1 of A. Then I do a very common jazz thing of going, landing on the 9th. And now this is the point where I'm thinking I'm going to D. So I play an A altered lick, thinking that's the chord that my line is essentially coming from. So I go, that's going to resolve perfectly down. And I think from memory I might have done like a country style resolution to the 3rd. In jazz, of course, it would just be like that. So we want to southern fry it a little bit. Then in D, I just did some stock standard double stop. Now it goes back to A, and I think I went to the 7th. So I did a little interesting trick there where I went up to the flat 7th of an A7 chord, which is cool, but then I played a D in the top, so I was essentially hinting at an A7 chord, a suspension of that. So it sounded like I was just stalling the resolution a little bit. Now that's just an A sort of bluesy country lick. Now I know I have 3 8th notes until I've got to get to beat 1 of our E7 turnaround. So the note I'm going to aim for is the fifth. This is a B, so I'm going to do a chromatic approach. That takes me to it. So I get perfect. You know, it's like stitched in. It's like when you see someone invisibly mending a garment, you know, and you might have had a tear. It might be a really beautiful dress made out of silk or something, and you can't even tell that it's been stitched together because the master alterationist has like found exactly where the seam is and where the weave is in the material, and they have just made their corrections so that it's essentially invisible. And that's what you hear when you're hearing someone playing great lines, is they're weaving in and out and working towards it. So they're building tension, but there's never this break. When I get to this first chord, I do this. That's a whole bar, right? So I'm essentially, although it's an E, I'm kind of outlining a B minor 7 chord, so I'm implying a 2-5-1. But all of those notes are contained within E as well. And at this point I turn it into this chord, an E altered chord. And I think, I can't quite recall what I played after that, but something like similar to the previous A lick. And then I ended on another E7 flat 9 lick of this. It's a very Joe Pass idea. You hear Pass do that all the time. So that's essentially all that you really need to do, is just slow things down and maybe work on one transition. So you might be thinking, I'm going from A to D, and you work on that. Try it in different positions. Try and aim for different notes. You want to resolve to the tonic of D, to the third of D, to the fifth of D, to the seventh of D, to the ninth of D, to the sixth of D, and then the transition back. And then you might want to insert one of those altered chords. So you're going to go A temporarily to A7, which is going to make the resolution even greater, and then you go to D. Go back to A, go from A to E, E to A, and you work on all of those components separately. It's like when people build a car, and just like sculpt a car out of steel. You know, they build the chassis, and then they build the inner components, and the seats are built separately, and the carpet and all of the interior is built separately, and it's gradually assembled once they're already built. You know, the tires are already an entity before they are put on the car. And so your lines aren't just going to magically happen if you just try and play them over changes. You have to break down all of the components and look at it and think like, okay, well, if I'm going from A here to D here, what are all of the different methods I could use to get from the third of an A to the fifth of a D, or the fifth of an A to the third of a D? You've got to think like a cab driver. You know, that's why a good improviser is like a New York City cab driver or a London cabbie. And, you know, when those guys start their shift, they don't know where they're going to go. But you're going to have somebody who at some point is going to say, I need to go to LaGuardia. And you might be on 14th Street. And it might be peak hour on a Tuesday. So what's the quickest route to get from 14th Street to LaGuardia? I don't know. Ask a cabbie. You know, you might have another person who says that they have to get from Angel Islington down to, you know, Tyburn or, you know, Marble Arch in London on a Wednesday at 3 o'clock in the morning. What's the best route? I don't know. But a jazz musician has to do a similar thing to that. You know, you might have 4 notes to get from a C sharp, which is played over an A chord, to an A in a D chord. And you have to try and connect them. How are you going to do it? We've got to work it out. So break it down slowly and work with the metronome, work with the backing track, and also just think about it. Try and visualize it and use your ear. Your ear is the Google Maps for your line. It will tell you if you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. It won't let you down. So please leave some comments about any other videos that you would like me to do on this topic. It's much bigger than one video, so I'll probably do a series. I have some videos on how to construct jazz lines. If some of the content in here is a little bit complex, I break down over a series of 4 videos how to create jazz lines, and I've talked about playing through changes in a simpler context in previous videos. Please follow me, hit the subscribe button. Please follow me on Instagram at RevDrZ and over at Facebook at my artist page. If you feel like leaving a donation, the PayPal me link is down there. Thanks for tuning in and happy picking. Catch you next time.